5.1, tender contract, Painoa Road drop structure. Mr. Brent Aiken and Mr. Dennis Lewis. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, David. The Painoa Road drop structure tender has been out to tender, and we've received one tenderer for that contract. Luckily, the tender price that's come in is on the engineer's estimate for the works. I think we've got a lack of capability or capacity out there currently for contractors. They seem to be all very, very busy and full of work, so reluctant to tender for too many jobs, unfortunately. But this job, as identified in a number of pictures on which are attached to this item, is to fix a considerable hole which is on land next to a house. It actually poses a significant health and safety risk to the residents at the end of Painoa Road. So we'd like to be able to try and get that constructed as soon as possible.
Any questions of just a point of clarification? So Painoa Road's a public road?
Correct.
So the public can go down there,
Yes.
turn around, come home again?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, questions? Councillor Body?
Yes, I do. I made contact with one of the persons on the boundary of that block of land that had a rush of water and some tomos appeared on the property. They eventually got funded by, was it earthquake? What do you call earthquake? Who looks after earthquakes and adverse flood events? Has that been looked at as an alternative for funding?
Not at this stage, no.
Well, there I would suggest that this be put in abeyance until we do so, because I'm interested in who eventually was responsible for the runoff in regards of the development at the top of Jarden Mile and other areas that may have adversely affected the flow of that water down that particular watercourse, and what was our responsibility in regards of the funding to get it across Acacia Bay Road. Where does the liability lie?
Councillor Park?
Yes, thank you. Under the significance of the decisional proposal, it is in the opinion that the consideration is of low importance. It also states, as I already knew, that the CEO's funding delegation is $250,000. Is this with council because it is unbudgeted expenditure or a different reason?
No, unbudgeted expenditure.
Right. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Your Worship, just
Councillor Clement?
I just need some clarification from Councillor Body's comments.
Yes.
I'm not aware that the Brentwood subdivision interferes with Parnui Road.
Painoa.
Yeah. Can you clarify that for me? I thought that the Brentwood subdivision was separate to.
So the area of Scott Drive, all those areas,
Yes.
what happened in the past was the regional council granted consent for the catchments above Painoa Road to be combined. Those
Okay.
combined catchments as part of a resource consent for stormwater for that subdivision. So the impact of that stormwater now comes down onto Painoa Road. We have been working tirelessly with the regional council and landowners and developers to try and reach an agreement to try and divert some of the catchment flow across other property, but we really need to work with the developer when he's prepared to develop that land. We put some money in the long-term plan to try and enable that to happen, but we are waiting on that developer to try and make a move. He's aware, obviously, that some of the water coming down that gully water coming down that gully does impinge on the Painoa Road. So there's been some discussions on that, but as a result of that subdivision and the consent, two catchments have been combined into one. Now, I don't think the regional council would do that again in the future, potentially.
So, do you anticipate that the Brentwood subdivision and the earthworks that are taking place at present are the cause of the washout?
No, I think we've got to understand there's 500 hectares above that current subdivision. I think if we look at the numbers, very small percentage of runoff from the actual subdivision.
Because it's contained in ponds.
Yes, it's contained in the ponds, but it only makes up a very small percentage of the overall catchment. So yes, it comes down the road, but actually the whole catchment actually goes from, if we think about it, from the lake edge right up to the top of Broaden's Road,
Poepi Road.
Poihipi Road,
Yeah.
right up to the quarry. So there's a
Yeah.
massive catchment that when it rains heavily and we have had some large events which have caused this hole, that's all coming down the hill. So yes, the subdivision does have a part to play, but a very small part.
So through the chair, just to clarify that, on page 31 of the diligent book and also the agenda, there's a plan
Yeah.
showing
Yeah.
the large catchment there, and you can see that considerable amount of the catchment is not in residential property. So Brent's it is all correct there. There is some relief available to the amount of stormwater that comes through there once the land on the lakeside of Acacia Bay Road is developed. We've been waiting for that. We've had discussions with our development engineers, and that is coming, but no one can put it, that could be in the immediate term to the medium term. These individuals in their property need relief pretty much before we get into those big thunderstorm periods.
Councillor Park?
Yes, without, I'm just trying to think how to tactfully put this. With the property that's in danger, is that a property that has been built with the appropriate consents?
Yes, it has.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Body?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My real issue was, and I think on the first page of this report, it actually sums it up as a significant rainfall event that caused the erosion damage in this area was unforeseen, blah, blah, blah. So to me, we should be looking at some sort of funding through whoever, rather than the ratepayers of the district having to pay. Now, this report also mentions the further development of that side of the road, but we don't know when.
Just an answer to that, through you, Your Worship. The events that have been coming down that road while unseen have become more and more frequent, and this won't be the first time that we've tried to fix this problem. We've had fixes that haven't obviously worked, but we were of the opinion that we were going to be able to divert water earlier than we have. So we had a flow path there previously. If you look at the photos, there's some bitumen cloth that supported that flow path, but the sizes of the vents coming through there are getting larger, as you can see over the last number of events have just become bigger and bigger, and they've damaged that flow path. It's time to put in a device that is fairly bulletproof.
Thanks,
Chairman, I accept all of that. I'm trying to ascertain why, as a council, we're responsible for an adverse event. Have those owners of those properties got any insurance? I mean, where does the liability lie without us actually testing to see where it lies?
So it lies with us because we're in charge of the stormwater, so it's our subdivision. So this is where we did go to the regional council, to put it really frankly, and Brent was probably trying to be too diplomatic, but we went to the regional council because one of the major things that's contributed to this is the two catchments come into one, which they approved, but they've been unwilling to go down that line. We pushed them pretty hard. So as the owner of the infrastructure, it's our stormwater from what's now become ours, because it's vested in us, which is causing this impact on this private property. So like any situation like this, when it's our stormwater, it's our responsibility to do something about it.
I thought it came from up here.
Yeah, just one last question from me. Following up from Mr. Green's comments, I'm actually really surprised that WRC have declined and say that it doesn't fit their funding criteria. Are we able to push back on that, or?
So through the chair, I can answer that. For the erosion control stuff, we had robust discussions, and they were over a long period of time, and they're pretty firm on moving that, and on not moving from their view that it's not caused from the lake. They say that fund is for erosion caused by the lake, rather than from stormwater discharges. So they're pretty clear on that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can appreciate the stance you're in, but I will raise it as a matter when we meet with the Lake Catchment Committee, because I'm a bit disappointed in their stance.
We'd appreciate it if you did. Yeah.
We will.
And back to Councillor Body's query, external funding on this. So, as engineers, what is your view? How would we go in an application?
Well, so Gareth identified that we hold the discharge consents for stormwater throughout the district, so the actual issue actually lies with us as the consent holder. So just go back one step. Once a subdivision actually gets consented through the process, then the consents actually come to council to administer and hold, and obviously the regional council monitor those consents to make sure that we're doing the right thing, but the actual consent and the discharge is actually ours.
So is there any other external agency that you could apply to?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. Okay. All right. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart?
That was definitely our intention, Maggie. Yeah. So I'm not sure if you're aware of the upstream catchment, but just over Acacia Bay Road, if you go past that gully at any time, you'll see a large, what is a structure that allows water to cascade down, and what that does is actually takes the velocity and the strength and the erosive power out of the water, and that's what we want to put in place there. So we've actually got one up in the catchment just up over the other side of Acacia Bay Road, and it takes the velocity out. That's exactly what we're going to be doing. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Stewart. Yep. Suggested recommendation there that we'll have to sort this out. So it's been moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Jollins. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against?
Thank you.
Carried. Thanks, Brent. Thank you, Dennis. Right, item 5.2, Otamahiki Cultural and Ecological Enhancement Project, 5.2. Thanks very much, and we have Gareth and Fraser here to... Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Good afternoon, councillors. Excuse me. This paper is presented for the Otamahiki Cultural and Ecological Enhancement Project. It is located at the north end of Spa Park, at the confluence of the Otamahiki stream and the Waikato River. The project seeks to address the many and varied issues of this site. These issues are primarily a result of the huge increase in visitor numbers. Excuse me. 500 a day in 2005, those numbers have swelled to 2,000 a day in 2016. To address these issues, we've worked closely with the key stakeholders, the 4 landowners of the site, the Tūwhara Maori Trust Board, the DOC, Patuiwi and TDC. Alongside that, we've worked closely with the visitors, tourists and other stakeholders such as Environment Waikato and the police, as well as experienced consultants, engineering and visitor experience consultants, experts. To capture the stakeholders' concerns and councillors' concerns, we progressed to detailed design. With extending the scope, it allowed TDC to apply for funding through the Government Tourism Fund. We were successful in obtaining $281,000 from that fund and $19,000 from EW. During the detailed design phase, there were a number of additional items required and prices were confirmed as contractors were now able to price on construction drawings. The main areas responsible for the price increases were the increased toilet scope. This had flow-on effects on the retaining wall, the engineering and the size of the viewing platform on top. Additional earthworks were more expansive to fully address the erosion issues on site, and as Brent's just alluded to, it's an ever-increasing problem with climate change. And we wanted to do it once, do it right. There's been some road slumping on the access road which needs to be addressed to facilitate access to the site, and market rates were significantly higher. But this, I think, only further illustrates the difficulty everyone has had with pricing complex projects of this nature.
There are a number of options available to reduce the project cost, but the main thing to bear in mind is that removing any items will have a detrimental impact on the effectiveness of the remaining items. This project provides TDC with a real opportunity to showcase our unique cultural and ecological features, but also how we choose to look after these treasures or taongas for current and future generations.
Thanks, Fraser. Thank you. All right. Any questions of Fraser and Gareth? Councillor Park.
Yes, sorry, I am a fan of this project, but I just wondered, why does this 334 K have to be an unbudgeted expenditure item? Because surely this is going to take months to complete and will be into the next financial year before it is fully complete. So can that 334 K not be in the first year of the LTP?
We haven't catered for that for the LTP, so we made no budget requirements for that.
Councillor Hickling.
Thank you, Worship. Fraser, you just commented on the possibility of some elements perhaps being deleted without compromising it too much, because I think it is just a little bit over the top to what I thought we was doing. Can you give us a little bit of comfort in terms of perhaps what could reduce a little without too much compromise?
I guess I'm really reluctant, as I say. I think the features all work together so well.
Yeah.
We take one out, it has a greater effect than just taking that item out, that it impacts on the others. So I'm reluctant to point out one.
In other words, you can't really miss anything out.
I don't think so, no.
I think there's
Well,
really
another question, Gareth, you might, or perhaps Kevin. How are we going with the capital works on council? Because if we don't complete all the capital works programs, there's usually money left over. Can some of it be transferred, or any suggestions on sooner than unbudgeted items? Is there a possibility, please?
We've got a range of unbudgeted items in today's agenda, but until we get to the year end and do our wash up as to where we're at, if any of them are from a particular targeted rate, it will be the 1920 financial year that it will have actually a rating impact. So until we get through, and as you'll see by the financials, some of it's we're ahead of plan so far. We've got quite a complicated financial beast being council. If us accountants struggle with it all of the times, I feel sorry for you having to deal with it as well. But in saying that, until we get to year end and see what the unders and overs look like, we don't know what the financial impact will be.
Alan, just actually while Alan's on the job, sorry, could that money come from DCs?
There is about a third coming from DCs. These are DCs that were collected a number of years ago.
Yeah.
The Spa Park development has been part of the council's long-term plan or master plan for a number of years.
Right.
So yes, we are funding about a third of it from DCs.
Good.
Because of the growth element involved.
Yeah.
So I guess through the chair, just coming back to Councillor Hickling's point, if I push you to page 40, in the agenda we've put a couple of options there, or Fraser's put a couple of options there, which are things that could be changed or reduced. Now that's certainly not our recommendation, and that's where Fraser's saying that he's hesitant to go down that path, but to be fair, some of the increased cost has come out of the discussion that you had at your previous workshop, which was about increasing the scope. So what we've tried to do there is give you, without it being a shopping list, some options that if this was unpalatable in terms of the cost, then you could look at compromising the overall design to reduce that down. And I use the word compromising quite deliberately, in that it would be a compromise in terms of that outcome, but everything in life is a compromise as well, because obviously affordability needs to be a part of that. So that's the best that we could do in terms of identifying out some of those things that you could make choices over. But it has to be a decision point for you because it does reduce the impact of that project.
Councillor Park?
Yeah, this is not this project so much, but you're right, there are a few unbudgeted expenditure items on this agenda, and I'm just not quite sure why there wasn't some foresight during the draft LTP workshops not to see that this project was over the 2 years. So I'm a little bit disappointed that it's come to us in this way, but I'm happy to move the resolution.
So here's if I can just answer that one. So you'll remember that when we came to you, we had a budget, and that's when councils increased the scope. It went out for tender. That was during that process of the long-term plan. So we didn't know what the dollars were going to come back in. So at that point, we were dealing with the estimates at that time based on the scope that we had at that time. That's clearly changed, and so therefore the cost has changed. So that's why there's nothing in the first year of the long-term plan.
Great, thanks. And I completely understand that, but we do have placeholders of other amounts for other things in the draft. So I just think that there should have been a bit more work financially done on that.
So it's through the chair, just to add to that, there's 3 unbudgeted items, which Gareth's just covered. This one here, the Panoa Road one, we were pretty confident and we were pushing hard on WRC, but we didn't manage to get across the line there at all. And the other one is kind of reactionary to the overflows that we've had, so that's an unbudgeted. So that's because we have tried to do it as quickly as possible to increase our operational performance in that space to meet the community's needs.
Cool.
And
Okay.
just-
Councillor Body?
I find it rather interesting, Mr. Chairman, and I take on board what we've been told about escalations of this and escalations of that. If we were a public company or a standalone business with an unending source of money, we'd probably proceed with what we've got. I always believe we had a budget set. For a variety of reasons, we've gone well over that budget, and I think we look back and see where we can prove very hard to get the results that we want, which is basically to people stop them toileting in the river and leaving rubbish. If that's the first stage, and it might be 3 years before we do the second stage, we still get the funding capital funding from the state, but I'm not going to support this open-ended, we're a little bit over, or a big bit over budget, but we can still pay for it. I don't follow that philosophy.
Councillor Jollins?
Through the chair, thank you. Just a question for Fraser. You mentioned earlier in your conversation about the significant earthworks that needs to be done because of the erosion that's happening through the area. Are there any risks for us investing a significant amount of money so close to the river? Are there any surety there that this isn't going to be an ongoing problem?
Well, I guess there's very few absolutes, but that's the point of doing the work and the scope that we've chosen to safeguard that as best we can.
Because in some areas we have like a managed retreat from the water's edge, and here we are investing over $1 million right at the water's edge.
Yes. Yep. No, we worked through that with Tonkin and Taylor. That was the first port of call, really, to clarify that part. Yeah.
Yep. So through the chair, just to add to that, yeah, we've engaged Tonkin and Taylor. They're pretty good at what they do in this space, erosion control in particular. But there's always a risk with erosion control protection. This one's kind of a little bit mitigated with the control gauge bridge and the amount of water that does come down the river. So it's a lot less a diverse area for erosion than other areas.
Very good. Yeah, Councillor Hickling?
Well, just in fairness to the staff, I think we did make the decision to increase this development. So, you know, at this late stage, I'm prepared to second the resolution, Your Worship, and congratulate the staff on a really good design. I think, you know, the trouble is that if we try and, as you say, if we try and diminish some of the features in there, we take away the good outcome that we could get at the end of the day. So,
Cool.
yeah, I think we've got to go with the design and keep our fingers crossed that it all works. And yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Hickling, and Councillor Parkin, I'll endorse those comments. You know, hugely high amenity value area down there. You know, I would hazard to guess that there's just as many visitors down there as Hooker Falls. I'm probably exaggerating a bit there, but you know, you see the hordes of international tourists going up Spa Road, just walking to there. Unfortunately, they're not going to the AC bars, but anyway, they're going to there for a complimentary swim. But there are a lot of locals that value that area so highly too. So thank you, Fraser and Gareth, for your work, and the plans look fantastic, and I think it's well worth it. All right, been moved by Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Hickling. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. 5.3. Wastewater network increased maintenance, overflow reduction, page 53.
So we'll get Michael to talk to this one. Unfortunately, Michael's the third in a row of unbudgeted expenditure.
Unlucky last.
Michael's going to just talk a little bit to the paper, but he's also got 3 slides which is showing some of the work that we have done. Well, we started the SL RAT, so the assessment of our manholes this week and a half, and he's got some slides to just talk about what we're actually finding there as well.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Councillors. So this paper is seeking $395,000 of unbudgeted expenditure to kick off a intensive sewer cleaning and inspection program. We do some sewer cleaning in the district already, about $100,000, and we tend to bounce from trouble spot to trouble spot, but never quite getting on top of the problem. And in the draft long-term plan, the consultation document, there's some funding for continued expenditure going forward. But so this budget is to get work underway now, continue the work that's already underway, and so that involves a lot of sewer inspection, and we're targeting areas in Taupo and Acacia Bay that have the potential to spill to the lake. And so Dennis has just popped up these slides here, and so we're good. Just one. So anyway, this is a jumping to the first one, Dennis. One of the new technologies we're starting to use is a device called an SL RAT, which stands for Sewer Line Rapid Assessment Tool, and you can basically put a sound wave down a pipe and look to see how fouled it is. And so you can see on this is a picture of one which has got some fouling, but it's working, it's not too bad. That's got an SL RAT score of 7.
What street's that?
It says at the top, go back there.
Back of Richmond there.
I'm starting to feel queasy after lunch.
Yeah, fast forward them. Right.
This is data with stuff we've collected in the last week or two. So this is fresh. So this is one we'll place at Richmond now. So this device has given us a score of 6. So what the device does is we put a sound wave down the pipe, and then you collect that wave at the end of the pipe, and you can see how fouled it is. And then rather than just blasting in and cleaning at the moment, because we're just kicking off, we're starting to camera these to get a feel of what does a score of 5, 6, 7 mean, where do we start cleaning. So you can see this is fat build up on the top of the pipe and in the bottom. So the score of the device has come down to a 6, and the next one is a bit more impressive. So that's the 2 fat lines coming together. So that's really that's a blockage waiting to happen. You know, if we don't clean that, that could overflow tomorrow. You know, something comes down the pipe, gets jammed, a wet wipe. So this is one we've tool to try and help refine our cleaning, but we are finding things already, and so this is really to bring down that number of overflows that are causing concern and get that project a real kickstart now.
All right, thanks,
so
Mike.
Your Worship, I suppose that's what your arteries look like if you smoke.
Same principle, I think.
Okay, any other any questions? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, hi. You said you're going to be starting this in Acacia Bay and around this end of the lake, but in the southern end of the lake, when will you start looking at their pipes? We've had some down in Takano and in Turangi itself as well, so...
Yeah, we've got a separate piece of work looking at our renewals program, and specifically in Turangi. That's about to kick off. Well, it actually already has. So we're doing 18 kilometres of sewer inspection starting now.
Thank you.
So through the chair, this just remember this figure here was in addition to the existing budgets. The existing budgets predominantly have been used in Mangakino and Turangi to date. So that's why we didn't want to touch that. We want to maintain that availability to do this type of work down there.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Stewart. All right, any other questions? Moved by Councillor Stewart that we approve this unbudgeted expenditure. Second. Was moved by Councillor Stewart. Oh, no, Councillor King, you already had. Councillor King, seconded. Correct? Yeah. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Thank you. 5.4. Draft waste management minimisation plan. Brent. Good afternoon, Brent.
Good afternoon. I promise not to show you any photos of fatty pipes. I'm just going to go off a little bit off-piece, and one of the things that we deal with in the recycling market, and one of the pushes that we've got in our waste minimisation plan, is to carry on product stewardship lobbying for government. This actual plastic container here is a recyclable one. Our producers of our products are now starting to cover these products with these wraps, and the actual when it goes through the processing line, it's the ultraviolet light can't actually determine what the product is. So instead of that being worth $200 to $400 a tonne, it's worth nothing. So I'd like us all to be able to push back to government. Eugenie Sage is the one that we can ask for product stewardship for, because the producers are making money but they're passing the cost to us.
So is that because of the wrap?
That's because of the wrap.
Yeah.
Just through the chair, Brent, also the Anchor milk bottles, the ones that you can't see through, they're hopeless as well, aren't they? Because they're
same problem.
two different types of plastic. So Anchor is someone we should push back on as well, I think.
Well, just from a product stewardship perspective, I'm sorry I'm going off piece there, Gareth, but Auckland Council did a product stewardship research paper independently, $28 million it will save local government to go to product stewardship for containers. So that's where I'd like us to be in the future. Sorry about that. To get on with the waste minimisation plan, we had a workshop a couple of months ago and went through our options table to include into our draft waste minimisation plan to go out for consultation. Those items in that options table are now included into the draft waste minimisation plan now for you to accept to go. Or to tweak if you feel you need to. Just going back on the numbers of some of the numbers of materials that we were able to divert this last year, we landfilled close to 24,500 tonnes of material, and we diverted 21,500 tonnes, made up of things like 5.2 million glass bottles, 15.82 million plastic containers, 8,000 tonnes of green waste, and 5,000 odd tonnes of concrete. So we're making a difference. These things make it difficult for us, but we are actually doing a really fantastic job out there. Some of the things that we've been able to achieve also since the last WMMP was limiting the size of large receptacles for folks, extending plastic recovery from instead of just the 1s and 2s through to the 3s to the 7s, so it's a massive number of recyclable, and that's probably why it's at 15.82 million containers. We've been able to extend our street recycling bin coverage. We've been able to subsidise home composting. I think we're over 900 households are now home composting since the start of the program. We're also doing workshops for them as well, and we've done some advocating for product stewardship. So the new things that we're looking to try and achieve are wrapped up in the back of the waste minimisation plan. I think the contentious thing out there in the community is the wheelie bins or not for wheelie bins, and I know that we talked about being halfway through our contract term. The contract's still got 6 years to go, and to make a change halfway through that contract would be costly for us. So that's where we're at. I'm happy to field any questions.
Thanks, Brent. Any questions, Councillor Stewart?
Yes, it's not really about your report. It's the composting workshops that you do.
Yes.
Can we have some in Turangi, please?
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Look to try and get a provider for us down there.
Talk to you.
Maybe talk to you
Yep.
afterwards. Yep.
Thank you, and I did read the report. I felt like you were talking me. I could hear your voice in my head through the whole thing. It's in your language.
Yeah, yeah.
On page 14 of your report, which is 79 of our agenda, you've had that graph of occupied and unoccupied dwellings, June 2016.
Yeah.
The actual stats only go through to 2013, but have we taken into consideration Airbnbs and rental markets?
Yeah, it's so really the statistics are from Statistics New Zealand, and they actually don't paint the full picture for us. I'm sure our actual recovery and disposal rates are actually better than what it says here, but it doesn't, and that's part of the problem with the waste levy that the government also give us. It's actually population based. So once the Statistics New Zealand have done their census, that's the number we're working with, not working with Airbnb or the massive amount of people we get coming through in the summer months.
Just one other one was on page 20 of the report, or 85 of the agenda, when it talks about the emissions trading scheme, and they're going to increase by quite a lot, from $4 to $19.
Yeah.
Do we take all that into consideration when we did our fees and charges?
Yes.
We did. Okay.
Yeah. We've allowed for the initial numbers now. I think we need to do some little bit more work just to see on where it's going to go to. They are going to reduce. We have actually got a 2-for-1 deal at the moment. That may be coming off, so we need to maybe tweak that long term, but I'm sure the government are going to put more pressure on that number to go higher.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Hickling.
Yeah, Brent, I know this is a draft and it's gone out for consultation.
Yes.
But with the development out at Kinloch,
Yes.
I see that the hours of the transfer station are still staying the same, which is 11:30 till 1
Yes.
through the week. Have you had any comments about?
I've actually had a discussion with the Kinloch Community Group, and they, prior to Christmas, said that they were going to do a survey for us. And I think we should be flexible to hear that survey result from the locals. One of the in that long-term plan, you will see there's some money budgeted to do some build some capacity in the refuse transfer station, because in the summer months it is getting impacted by high numbers. So I can imagine that having a tweak of the operating hours probably wouldn't cost a hell of a lot by opening it an hour earlier or changing the hours by a small number.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hickling. Thank you, Brent. Right, any other questions, Councillor Boddy?
Thank you, Brent, and thank you for your quick reaction when I had a couple of problems with pickups of rubbish.
No problem.
Really appreciated that.
Yeah, no problem.
In your report, you mentioned about the green waste being not so much to the market, but in another page it says as the contractor sells. Is that free to the general public?
So what we've got a little bit of a different scenario around the district. What we allow at the transfer stations, other than the landfill, is free collection of green waste material. But because the contractor has to add the kernels, herbs and spices and put a bit more effort into it, that is his product at the end of the day at the landfill only. We've had to make a difference there because of just the sheer tonnage of material. We couldn't rely on the community taking it away for free. We do struggle from the other sites about the volumes building up over time. So that is actually owned by the contractor.
In your report, you also mention about sale of product to China. Now, there's been a big turn down since we had when you took us around all the sites.
Yes.
How's that looking to forward impact on our sales?
We with EnviroWaste, I suppose that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this sort of thing to your attention. They want clean product. Our current service delivery that we provide is we only have about 1% contamination. One of the reasons why I'm a little bit hesitant to go to wheelie bins long term, because in Palmerston they're about 18% contamination. But hey, if we can keep a clean product, then I think the gate will still be open to very clean product. The problem for China is that Europe and America have been disposing of contaminated recyclable commodity into China, and that's why the fence has come up at this time.
Now, finally, Mr. Chairman, in your report you've mentioned pack in and pack out, which happens at a lot of Auckland beaches.
Yes.
Does that just shift the problem? It's still going to have to be picked up somewhere, doesn't it? So it doesn't lessen what goes to the landfill.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we see around our district is like the likes of Dock around the eastern lakeshore don't have any rubbish bins. In some areas that's good, but in areas where I'll use, say, Whareroa, for instance, there's no shops there, so everybody will actually buy their food items at the supermarket or at the store. They'll take them to their home in Whareroa, and they won't actually discard them over in areas where we don't want them to. We're vastly different here in Taupo, where a lot of people are actually purchasing food and actually eating it out of that area. So I think pack in, pack out works in some areas, but you're right. If they don't pack it, if they do pack it out, they're looking to dispose of it elsewhere. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Brent. All right, suggested recommendation there. Adopts the statement of proposal for the draft waste management minimisation plan for consultation. Yeah, I have a mover. Thanks, Councillor Park. Seconded by Councillor Stewart. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against?
Thank you.
Carried. Thank you, Brenda. 5.5, submission to the Māori Affairs Select Committee on the Ngāti Te Wharetoa Claims Settlement Bill. 5.5.
Thanks. Good afternoon, councillors and
Nick.
your worship. This is a very short paper because there's not much to say, so I'll leave it at that and happy to take any questions.
Any questions of Nick on this? No, all straightforward. Could I suggest a recommendation there? Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Stewart. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. Thanks, Nick.
Pleasure.
5.6, Council's January Performance Report. 181. Good afternoon, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just before I get into the actual report, just the cover pages there. Just, obviously, this is the first real meeting of the year. So just noting there that we've had a very good summer in the district. The amount of people and therefore money through the tills has been quite outstanding. The feedback that we're getting from retailers is that it was the busiest summer that they've ever had, which is great, and that's certainly been my observation looking around. The pleasing thing is that we did have a very good summer through that as well in terms of a very limited number of issues. The police tell me that it was a very low-key summer for them with very few concerns, particularly around that New Year's period, so that was useful. However, we have, and I note in my report, a few challenges that we've had recently. One that you've resolved on just today in terms of the wastewater spills, so hopefully we will see a significant difference to that going forward. And the other one that I note there is the continuing challenges that we've had in the parks and reserves area in particular with some of our maintenance and ability to be able to maintain a level of service that the district is used to. That's an area that as a management team we're certainly working on and have some plans in place to be able to deal with that on an ongoing basis. Lastly, obviously there's the algae bloom that happened just before Christmas, and you're all very aware of that, so I won't go into that in any further detail. But unless there's any questions on that, we'll get straight into the sort of summary of where we're at financially.
Questions, Councillor Park?
Oh, no, it's not a question, more of just a statement. I'd just like, I'm sure on behalf of the councillors around the table, thank Gareth and the team for the way they led and responded to the toxic algal bloom issue. It was just absolutely fantastic, and I just don't think it could have been handled any better. Just to see all the staff out there in high-vis vests and comms just flowing through all the different channels, and Gareth, the way you led and got us through that with WRC and the public health people was outstanding, so thank you.
Very good. Callum, monthly Treasury report.
Yeah. What Councillor Park just said is a good lead into what I was thinking, that there are so many positives occurring through council, and we seem to talk about the negatives first and the positives second. And when I go through the financials here, it just reflects just so many positives that exist within council. So if we start with the Treasury Management Report, we tend to sound like a bit of a stuck gramophone record as far as our investment performance, outperforming budget, our debt under control, the performance of the general fund as well as the performance of the TL fund, giving returns that are substantially greater than the normal deposit rates that are available in the market. If we look at the financial performance of council as a whole, and this is the first forecast we've actually done for the year, we can see that the apart from some of those subsidy areas where you've got Ministry of Health subsidy coming through for Waitanui and subsidies for erosion and sundry grants and other items, the fact is that the level of activity in the regulatory area, in the water recoveries, in the venues, right across is substantially greater than what we've budgeted. Yet we're still doing it with personnel costs in line with budget. Now, there's a lot of pressure on staff. They're performing. What shows through when we look at the full year budget versus the full year forecast, and the full year forecast is now looking at being about 6 million greater than what the original budget is. We do a budget in about October of the year before. It's a moving beast. With the amount of development and growth that's occurring in Taupo, we're starting to see a lot of that activity come through. Don't know how long it's going to last, but it just shows you the difference between that forecast and the surplus, albeit that we have not included any of the unbudgeted expenditure that you've approved today, because until you've approved it, we're not including it in the financials. But it just shows you how dynamic and complicated this business really is to capture through financial reporting.
Right, thanks, Alan. Any questions of Alan? Councillor Park?
Just one, and excuse my ignorance. On page 187 with the counterpart credit exposure, the line underneath that with policy compliance with the cross about we're currently over 20 million, BNZ May, June, anticipate being back within policy in a couple of months. That same statement, and also I'm aware of the exceptions to policy, but that statement's been exactly the same and not changed from last year. Is there any particular reason why it says a few months when it's probably 8 or 9 months now?
Yeah, good question. The challenge we've got is the avenues to which we can invest money, especially short term, or even longer term, because corporate paper doesn't exist. We're limited to 4 banks in New Zealand. The BNZ's our main transaction bank, but we find it quite a challenge on a daily basis, not just on a monthly, to stay within those $20 million parameters as far as their exposure to any one bank. I can't see the situation improving. We don't want to open an account, for example, in Rabobank Bank or something like that, just to stay within the limits. We prefer to try and, as I say, balance on a daily basis. And it becomes a challenge, especially if it's rates month, where we might have got $10 million in on one particular day. But yes, good question.
So is the last comment in there that we anticipate being back in policy within the next few months? Is that something that we need to change for if it's going to stay the same?
Well, we would like to think that we can get in. It's really very much to do with that cash flow management. To what extent are we able to use existing reserve funds versus having to, say, on major capital projects, because the capital projects are going like this now through the rest of the year, and that's one of the reasons why we think we'll be able to stay, come back in. So watch this space.
Okay, Councillor Boddy?
Thank you, Alan. I've just picked up that we did have a bit of a loss on our forestry at Turahonga. Was that because I thought the market was quite high in regards to forest sales?
We are still felling trees out at Turahonga. Part of the challenge out there is the road access.
Get down and out, yeah.
And but the flow-through effect, we're starting to get a greater return. And forest is always one with a difficult access. We have a small forestry block beside the transfer station at Kinloch, and we are looking at potentially clearing that completely and making it rural, for rural purposes. And so you got all those little blocks that things are forever moving.
Okay. On page 198, I think it's under transport, and I've only just picked this up. It's to do with this path, the shared path, Whariwaka to Rainbow Point. It states that the budget for 3618 is 409,000. Now we've carried it about the 170, and our annual plan hasn't got anything for 17, 18, and this appears to have just come back in the documents for September. Are we talking the same thing?
Through the chair, we're all going to have our turns covering our particular portfolio areas, so I'm quite happy to do the hospital pass to Kevin at the stage.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Community services. Next one. Mr. Brian Fox. Good afternoon, Brian.
Good afternoon, councillors. A couple of things in this space, Your Worship, in community services. You may recall during our LTP discussions I mentioned to you about our civil defence response team, and as an activity in itself you're not required to have a civil defence response team. So I thought I'd better give you some other side of the story just quickly. It seems to be more common these days that I'm reporting that we are attending events and helping other people out around the country, and our team responded to an event in up Thames Way recently, and we've had some very good feedback on that. So I'm just letting you know that even though it's a voluntary activity that we have here in respect of our communities, we assist others, and it's very much gratefully received from them. We've had some great communications back about the work that they do, because in those areas it's often the staff that are affected as well. So when you can bring in a staff from outside, it helps a lot. So just a little bit of feedback on that. We also had some communications from Bay Trust. They advised us that their annual grants process is a sum of unallocated money each year, and the sums that are appropriated for this district are in approximately 800,000, I think, from memory, Tina. But traditionally only about 500k is taken up. So they've asked us to come back with some thoughts around that, which we provided to them in terms of areas of activity that align with their strategic objectives and our community strategic objectives, housing, elderly, youth, etc. The interesting feedback was that of all the councils they approached in terms of the unallocated funds that they have sitting there, only 3 responded. So hopefully that'll give us, put us in good stead when we do make applications, or other parts of the committee make applications. So that's in the community space. Apart from that, business as usual, very much in that activity.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Any questions of Brian? No? All right. Water.
Right, so on the water one, which is page 193, you'll see now that we've forecast shows that the renewals are basically on track. It was, pretty much end of January report. We're halfway through those renewals. We're forecasted to do all of those. The CapEx one is a little bit behind because of just we let a lot of tenders in that early part of the year. So the tenders that are already been committed but not showing in these figures, Motuapa Reservoir, and that started on site in the last couple of days. That's about $500,000. So Te Tuku Fawley Main, that starts in March. You guys approved that last council meeting. Waitanui job is going through that. That figure there is probably less than 30% of the overall spend there. So we're moving through that pretty smartly. And Mapuro is another one, which is we're commissioning that actually today and tomorrow. So we've working through a lot of these. A lot of that budget was committed, and we're getting onto the job. So not committed yet, but underway. Is we've got a water reservoir. So we've got registrations of interest is going out, and that closes in March for that work. That is a project though that has a carry on for the next financial year as well. So we're probably likely to carry over in that process for that one. So that's showing that little bit of a gap there on the total CapEx spend, because we will be actually doing the construction, the majority of the construction next financial year. So I think we're pretty much on track for water, and happy to take any other questions if there are any before we...
Thanks, Kevin. Any questions? Transport.
Get to that page.
Page 197.
Yep, so transport one there is what we've committed, and you guys are fully aware that through the last meetings we had the renewals for the LED lighting procurement, which is about a $2.5 million one. That starts in April. And we've also got the LED installation. We're still assessing that. We've had difficulty with some of the tenders that we've received. We're just working our way through that and doing due diligence there. So we're ready to roll on probably $3.5 million of that overall expenditure as soon as we sort through that. We've also got Pukawa Slip footpath at Hoka Falls is nearing completion as well. Rainbow Point Lake Terrace. So tenders have been received, and we've got a report going to March council meeting. And then Poipi Road widening, we're still in assessment. We're hoping to get that to this meeting here, but as per other things, the tenders need a bit more assessing and a bit more rigour before we're able to let it with some confidence, and that will be going to the March meeting. And we've got a Mapura Road footpath, the design is underway with that. So again, we're reasonably on track with the majority of the transport stuff.
Thanks, Kevin.
I gave a little bit of warning, Kevin.
Yep.
In regards to that footpath, why is there that difference from what we agreed in the annual plan, and have I missed something?
I asked Mr. Lewis of that as well, and we can't give an answer. So what we can do is we'll get you an answer. I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Community facilities. Who's that?
Yep. Just nothing to it. Looks like I'm doing community facilities. Can someone just tell me what page that's on?
Page 200.
Yep. No. Okay. So yeah, feel free to come up, John. Yeah. Yeah. So what John's going to read, there's the only comment I can make is on the figures there. The majority of the main building is the largest reason for the difference there, and maintenance of the building and the renewals part in particular. We're not having to do a lot of maintenance that was required under the original budget because we are demolishing that building.
I guess in terms of services we provide over Christmas, so this is traditionally our real full-on time of year, particularly in the pools, and depending on the weather outside, we've had a mixed summer. But the incomes, particularly in the pools, Turangi was way up from where it's traditionally been, which is really cool. And also the AC baths has been heaving depending on the weather out there, so you'll see the incomes significantly higher than budget. But we do that in terms of actually operating those. You'll see expenditure wise we've kept within our budgets there. I guess there was a red light around the Turangi playground. We're getting some traction now around the reserve management plan process done in Turangi. I feel we're beginning to get a bit of traction in there, so that hopefully next year we can actually crack on with some of that stuff.
Just through the chair, on page 200 with the variances of budget, the subsidies and grants from WRC for erosion work would be $111K, not $111, I'm thinking. And also, it's quite unusual to see a gain on selling vehicles, particularly of around 47 grand. Is that because of in the way they are procured now, as opposed to selling?
I would suggest we got Arthur Daly over here, probably who would. You might, yeah.
All right.
We have got a fleet manager that we've employed relatively recently to help us with our purchasing and disposal, etc. So I'm not sure whether or not that's something that's flowing through that, but I'd expect that sort of trend to continue, definitely.
Right, Dunedin. Okay. All right, what have we got? Wastewater.
Yeah, so the wastewater one, in our renewals in particular, we're doing a lot of work at Mangakino. We've got a $1.5 million job starting up in April there. That won't finish until October. It's quite a long, lengthy process we've got to do there of relining. So the renewals will be committed, but not completed through the end of this year. Capital awarded contracts, so Pukao was awarded to Downers. There's $250,000. So we've got 3 tenders out at the moment. Kinlock, access into the wastewater site, effluent tank, and Whakaaro, wastewater treatment plant upgrade there. So all of that, don't want to give you the estimates because it is public information before we get the tenders in, but it's in around that $1.5 to $2 million worth of work in there. And we've got tender documents being finalised at the moment, and that includes the Waitanui wastewater treatment plant demolition. So all of those there mean that we're on track. But to be fair, the wastewater one is the one that we are probably struggling to get through all of the capital works relative to the others in the infrastructure area. But that's something that we're working on, and it is something that we've got teams also working on the increased maintenance that we're doing with $395,000 and trying to work out the wastewater overflows type of stuff. So that is one that we need to concentrate on over the next 4 to 5 months, definitely.
Thanks, Kevin. Councillor Stewart.
Sorry, Kevin. It says that for the Pukao one that the work is expected to start in early March. Is that happening or not happening? Because it's got a red blob.
I understand it's happening in March. I've sort of been told. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, solid waste.
So for solid waste and stormwater, I'm happy to take those as red because really they're on track. There's a lot of greens there. The red one for solid waste in particular is because of the refuse volumes going into the landfill, but we all know about that one. But happy to take any questions.
Councillor Boddy.
Just in regards to Habitat for Humanity taking that shop over at we closed it down because health and safety.
No. So what was the question? Sorry, Councillor Boddy.
Habitat for Humanity interested in running the reuse shop at the landfill and investing the revenue back into housing projects in the district. That shop was shut down, was it not, for safety reasons?
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe Mr. Fox might be able to help. There was a press release.
So no, it wasn't shut down. What happened was that they stopped taking particular parts of waste, so it was whiteware, etc., that they were struggling to move around. So the rest of the shop is still operating. The shop, we don't run the shop. The contractor does, and the contractor's entered into a discussion with Habitat for the Humanity in terms of them running that part of the facility. We've replied back to them, to our contractor, basically talking about the levels of service. That's our key concern is that the service still applies for our customers, essentially.
So will the contractor still be running that, except for what we've deemed they can't?
So no, the contractor is subcontracting the running of that shop to Habitat for Humanity.
And they're covered by all the health and safety blah blahs?
Correct.
Thank you.
Democracy and planning. Brian, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. I'll take this item as read. Really the big piece of work coming up for you, and I think it's this week actually, we've got the workshop on the representation review, so that's a significant piece of work for you as a governance team.
Thank you very much. Any further? Nothing more?
Just quickly, it's
Councillor
interesting to
Boddy.
see that we've had some success in brackets to do with freedom camping, and could I congratulate the CEO on his letter that he sent to that particular lady that was pinged on the waterfront. It was well handled. All that we now need to do is sort the dogs and cats out.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Investments?
Yeah,
Or
that-
Alan's covered that earlier, didn't
We
you?
sort of covered that under the Treasury Management Policy stuff, and it's another good news story.
Cool. Economic development?
Right, so you'll all have had the recent Infometrics data that came through. So just a real snapshot just to reinforce some of the things Gareth was talking about, the GDP being above national and regional measures significantly. retail spend up 7% when the national spend is up 3%. So again, tracking really high. Reinforcing Alan's comment, residential consents up 15% and commercial up 27%, which is significant. In terms of the events, we're right in the middle of our event season now. We've got Ironman coming up this weekend, another big weekend for the team. We had a couple of big concerts over the summer. The new test, I guess, was at Owen Delaney Park, which was the Fusion concert, which had about 5,000 people at. So on the back of that, we've had 2 more inquiries to use that venue. So it's beginning to get some traction. That's been some of our tactic to try and offer a different, I guess, a different feeling for these concerts, and also because it's well serviced with fencing and things, it makes it really quite reasonable to run things there. And we have recently, I won't go into too much detail, but made significant progress on the airport terminal. So any questions I want to take?
Councillor Park?
Just one, hi John. Just after being involved with the whakaaro plan for a while, what is the regional strengthening strategy?
So that's the economic development. Remember we Jess presented it. This is the
Oh,
right, okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Just got flash name.
So through the chair, sorry, I've just we've got a bit of information for the footpath. The difference in the dollar value is because it's funded by Bowwave, and Mr. Lewis has got a spreadsheet open if Mr. Potty wants to have a look at that at some time to satisfy his curiosity. Thanks.
So just very quickly, Mr. Chairman, does that mean it's always been 400,000?
I understand, yes, the project's always been 400, it's just the way it's funded.
But we've consistently only been shown the 170. I take on board what the explanation is, but we've always had it in our books as being 170.
Okay, thanks everyone, and thank you, and just endorse the previous comments. Thank you, Mr. CEO, for guiding us through the last 2 or 3 months in a great manner. Obviously, we've had some wastewater spills, which have been a bit disappointing, but apart from that, our infrastructure's held up pretty well for the catering for the the visitors that we've had come in, and the only comments I get are quite complimentary. So appreciate to you if you could pass on to your fellow team down the ladder a bit to say our appreciation. And as you say, those lawns got away a bit on us before Christmas, but I think they're slowly coming back into order. And not to dismiss the student help that we've had too. I'm not too sure how many students we've had here. 20? Do we take 20 on? Approximately. Yeah, but that's handy too. So, all right. Recommendation there that we receive the information. Thank you. I have a move. Thanks, Councillor Hickling, seconded by Councillor Kingy. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Item number 5.8. Oh, 5.7, sorry. I'm jumping the gun. Conference, council engagements and conference opportunities. Good afternoon, Tina.
Good afternoon. So there's just one more to add on there, and that's for the 22nd of March, 7 p.m. So that's Kinloch Representative Group meeting. There'll also be another couple of workshops popped in. We haven't got the dates yet, so we'll let you know when that might be. That's one for Kinloch again, and also the workshop on the RMA and the developments.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Tina. Councillor Park.
Just with thanks, Tina. On the Tuesday the 13th, there's a TTCB workshop on Turangi trees.
Yes.
Just as members of Fred, do you think it would be a good idea that we attend that, or what's the nature of it?
So my understanding, it was a request from the board just to get a bit of an idea of what I suppose the issues or the concerns with the trees on the infrastructure, and so it's really just a report identifying those trees and the issues. But I can certainly, I can send an invitation through to Fred if you wanted to go down as well. Happy to do that.
Workshop, I presume,
Yep.
is open. Yeah.
I'm sure Fred would welcome the board would
Yep.
welcome members of Fred.
Yep.
All right, Zone 2 meeting,
Yes.
Thames Coromandel. Oh, sorry, Barry.
Just a clarification, Tina. The Turangi Reserve Management Plan Committee on the 8th.
Yes.
You got the senior citizens hall.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's
Because the boardroom had been pre-booked.
okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to
Yep.
make sure where I was going.
All right, who wants to go to the beach? Whangamata? The 6th of April, Friday, for Zone 2 meeting. No takers? Christine? Dust off your bathing costume and away you go? No?
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Rosie?
Oh dear.
Possibly? Okay, can we,
We can pop it in.
retrospective that?
Well, we can pop it in, and then
yeah.
if councillor doesn't go, then it doesn't matter.
Yep, okay, cool. All right, recommendation there, 1 and 2. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Jollins, seconded by Councillor Stewart. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Members' reports, 5.8. As Rosie said, I think we might have been a bit slacked over the last couple of months on these reports, but the general thrust of them was that we've got our diaries anyway, so it's just a matter of just printing them out and sending them through. Any?
It's certainly something I've been wanting to work on, so you can just enter it online. So I'll continue to do that.
Might be put on diligent. Rosie, Roseanne, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Look, I just wanted to give you a quick verbal update from our Kinloch representative group meeting that was held a couple of weeks ago. The guys are currently putting the minutes together, and I've got the draft ones here, but it was a very long meeting. It took about 4 hours, and our agenda notes, our minutes go over about 6 pages, so I just need to review those at the moment, but I just wanted to give you a bit of an update. From my perspective, and I'm sure Barry and Christine would comment as well, it was a really, really good meeting. We had a huge show of support from the TDC staff, and I'd like to thank everyone who gave their time up to come there, and it was duly noted by a lot of the public that we had there. We had about 20 people come on the day, and I think I've got high hopes for the Kinloch representative group. I think it's going to be a great forum to engage with the Kinloch community, because the whole point of this group is for us to get together so that we can provide local input into the decisions that we're making here in council, and also, I guess, to report on matters of interest to the community. Just a couple of key points I wanted to signal to you, because you haven't got the minutes yet, is it became very clear to me in that meeting that the Kinloch structure plan, of which a significant amount of work was done a few years ago, is a piece of work that represents the aspirations of the community. When we start talking about variations to that Kinloch structure plan is when we start to get some anxiousness from the community in terms of protecting that overall intent of that Kinloch structure plan. So the group and the community are very much saying to us, please protect the intent of that plan that we all worked on several years ago. There is some concern around some of the variations and some of the consent, some of the proposed developments that are coming up, which have yet to come to council for consent. But another big area of concern for the community are the environmental impacts of some of these developments. We've had some significant runoff, particularly from Loch Eagles, and we can't just talk about the weather and our pumice soils, because we've had 3 major events in less than sort of 5 or 6 months, and it is having an impact on the Whangamata stream and on the lake. And I know that there are controls and design controls in place, but we are still getting spills from those sites, and when they enter the lake, they're not controlled in my book. So the community is very much saying to us, we need to take a stronger stance with those developers when there are those sorts of breaches and runoff, and we need to take a stronger stance with WRC taking some measures on that. There is a recommendation that was put forward at the council meeting, which you'll see in the minutes, and I just wanted to read it to you because we will be meeting again before our next council meeting. But the recommendation that was put forward was that this committee recommends to council that any future changes to resource consents, like that of Loch Eagles, must be first considered by this committee, but only agreed to if they are in line with the conditions of the future development in the Kinloch Community Structure Plan. So that talks to that major point that I raised at the beginning. And the committee has asked council to adopt a policy of all future subdivisions of any scale, including the proposed larches in Sevenoaks, to be fully notified resource consent applications and to provide ample time for parties to submit either in favour or against. Now, what we agreed at the meeting was that we would take some, we would provide some information to the next meeting about the legality of all of this. So we are meeting again, I think it's the 22nd of March, to have this discussion. I think what we need to focus, there is a way forward through this, and I think it's about working with the community, with the developers and with council to make sure that we're delivering on the aspirations of the community and keep referencing back to that Kinloch structure plan. So that's where we're at the moment. Because we got such a great turnout, we decided to have an evening meeting so that more people could come. And so that will be, yeah, as I said, the 22nd, and we're going to do another workshop because we were going to meet every couple of months, but we've got so much to discuss. We set another meeting for next month. So is there anything else you two would like to add?
Well, just to say, to reiterate, that they're a passionate and strong community. They're not going to let us off the hook, not that we're trying to do that in any way, shape or form. They are adamant about what they want in their community, and I don't think I've ever seen such an active community in any of the time I've been in local government. The meeting was packed. It was I have to say Roseanne chaired it very well because members of the public were moving and seconding things. It was very interesting, but it did bring to the forefront in my mind the fact that we don't understand the conditions that sit around subdivisions, and I think for the whole of our district we need to be aware of those so that we can speak to them and understand why they've been agreed to and why things are notified or not notified. I've never been involved in that before, but it's been a real learning process for me, and some of it I understand why the community's really upset. Unfortunately, the law does take us down a particular path, whether our staff want it to happen or not, but we've got to be very mindful of what that community wants, and if every community were as stroppy as them, things would be different, probably.
Just to add to that, like Bike Taupo met the other day and the Kinloch issues did come up, and from their point of view it's about the advocacy of safe roads for the mixed users, and from the traffic count data that they have received, the numbers are definitely up. They're almost double on what they were sort of 5-6 years ago, but also their concerns are around traffic in Kinloch, and with the added growth and more vehicles on the roads, that's where they would like some concentration as well.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just if I can add, just for Councillors' info, we are planning to have a RMA 101 workshop with you fairly shortly, and that a lot of the stuff is related back to that Resource Management Act and what you can and can't do. So I think it'd be worthwhile for us to give you some education around that, and as part of that I'm planning on bringing in the likes of Alan Vane, who does the teaching of the training of this when you go and get your accreditation, and as a local lawyer that practices in this area, he can explain to you what you can and can't do, because as Councillor Rankin said, whilst we appreciate the community on one side with their views, often the Act doesn't provide the ability for us to do that, so there's an inherent tension there that you need to understand as well.
Yes, Your Worship. Been on the committee and meeting these passionate people. I'd like to get to the position where the minutes of the meeting, the previous meeting, is presented to council within that month. Because their expectation is that that resolution was going to full council. Well, it won't get full council until the March meeting, which we're going to have another meeting before that. And so it just, and I know there's a few problems with the dates and typing and things like that, but I see nothing wrong if we could even get the minutes, and even if it means that we can just table them at the full council, so that there's a little bit more urgency and action on whatever comes out of those meetings, Your Worship. Just a little bit of.
So I guess if I can, so it really comes down to the timing and the frequency of the meeting versus the council meeting, and the ability for the staff to be able to prepare those minutes. In terms of that recommendation, I do note that wasn't a recommendation. I think the chairperson didn't actually allow it to be put as a recommendation in the end, because there's that discussion around the ultra vires nature of it, and that legally we can't do it. So it was a discussion point, which I think you're going to discuss again at the next meeting. So in terms of that, I don't think we've lost anything at not coming here, because you couldn't resolve on it here anyway as a council. But I definitely take your point, and we do our best to try and get the turnaround as fast as possible.
Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you for members' report. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried.